Yes, I need a hero. Roger Fredinburg with you today. Always a true pleasure to be here, an honor, really. And, you know, you think you need a hero, but we have a lot of heroes out there, people who've been fighting, working hard, trying to save our country from the lunatics that want to rob us of our freedom. One of those guys over the years is Gun Owners of America superhero Larry Pratt, who joins us today. Hello, Larry.
Well, what a nice introduction. Good to be with you.
Well, there's so much news, and I don't dare broach the topic without having you here. You guys, Eric sent me out a press release the other day about Loretta Lynch, and then I've been watching this story with fascination on El Chapo and the 50 cal, and then there's the Obama mess. I guess Larry Klayman's filed a suit against the executive orders, and I don't know. I'll try to get to all that today, but I guess first let's start with Loretta Lynch. What's going on with her, Larry?
Well, the president has a faithful lieutenant who is clearly intent on carrying out his wishes in the area of limiting the Second Amendment as much as they can. The president, to the credit of the Republicans, they don't get much because they don't deserve much, but the president lamented that his real big disappointment was that he hadn't been able to move the agenda on guns. And so he's taken to trying to be a congressman as well as an executive. And that kind of breeds its own areas of concern, but he's trying to make it so that they can get more and more people ensnared in the government record-keeping system, the background check, which we're convinced is not simply that they're not obeying the law. They're supposed to destroy information on background checks after 24 hours, just the way they weren't supposed to abuse information at the IRS, nor were they to be doing what they did to phone call data at the NSA. So anybody who wants to defend the president, saying that, well, you know, he's limited to what he can do with the information that comes in from the instant background check, well, by law he is, but in fact, we're pretty sure that the administration that gives contracts to scholars to do longitudinal studies on the data in the instant background check database, somehow we think that longitudinal means more than 24 hours.
Yeah, well, I don't. What I don't understand, and maybe a lot of people are confused as I am about this, but I don't understand how it is in this modern era, and I began to see it, I think, most significantly with Bill Clinton, but it's grown since then. This propensity to hold people in high position to a different standard than everyone else. In other words, the law doesn't seem to apply to them. And to me, that's as dangerous as taking away the Second Amendment.
You know, that's a very, very interesting point. Many years ago, I was in the state legislature, only for a term. I had competed twice in 2 different elections. The second time around, it kind of looked like I might make it, which, of course, I ultimately did. And in the run-up to the election, when I was successful, I noticed, and I told my wife and several other people, you know, I can see how politicians fall into the trap of thinking they're not like other people, that they're above the law, because people were beginning to almost literally bow and scrape when dealing with me, even as they did after I had been elected. Paying deference to somebody in office may be okay, but to the point of treating someone in office as if they have a royal assignment, I think that's pretty dangerous, and I can see how that can play on the mind of somebody who gets into office unprepared for those kinds of unannounced blandishments. And if everybody else thinks he's so special, well, then maybe he can be excused for thinking that He really is something special.
Right. But I mean, Hillary Clinton should be in jail. I don't think there's any question that she should have been processed and booked and maybe out on bail, but she should have been arrested for the things she's been accused of doing because the evidence is pretty clear. And Bill Clinton should have been impeached and thrown out and probably should have been put in jail for perjury. If you and I commit these crimes, and I mean, I can't speak for you directly, but I can certainly tell you that my concern, my fear, my worry would be if I committed those crimes, I would go to jail.
Right.
And so the president now, and here's the biggest and most confounding thing for me, Larry, and you're working with these congressmen all the time. Where in the hell are they? I mean, this guy's just running roughshod over Congress, and I'm not hearing any loud screaming. I don't see any real kicking and fighting back. What's going on?
Well, in fact, you put your finger on a real bad problem. The Republican Congress has given funding for Obamacare. They could have denied it. They've caved to the president on the EPA, even though the EPA has now been shown to be one of the very biggest polluters, and this is the agency above all others that's supposed to be dealing with pollution.
Again, above the law.
Above the law. The whole program, Fast and Furious, was devised, we know from memoranda that were submitted as evidence to the Congress during hearings on Fast and Furious, was devised as a way of, while giving guns to the Mexican cartel, boosting the murder rate south of the border, and then blaming that on the guns that came from American gun stores. All the while, our government itself had been directing those guns to the Mexican cartel. They've got some 2,000 people, last we heard, that are dead, murdered and dead as the result of Operation Fast and Furious. And now they're telling us, and Mrs. Lynch is telling us, how we have to really pay attention to getting a background check on every firearms transaction. Really? My selling a .38 revolver to a neighbor that I've lived next to for several years is somehow ought to be subject to the same level of scrutiny as, say, Fast and Furious, and the same people are going to be looking over my shoulder as committed Fast and Furious. Until we rise up and tell the government, you're dangerous, you're hypocrites, and we need to get rid of you. Well, we've had two chances not to elect this leader, and we've done it anyway. I'm not sure what it takes, because the guy has been caught, he's complicit in a mass murder for a political objective. Couldn't be any more disgusting situation. And the information is out there, although admittedly you have to dig a little bit to get it. It wasn't on the national news. It wasn't on the evening news with whoever it might be speaking on behalf of the government tonight. But it's out there, and yet we haven't had any pushback because of Fast and Furious. And I think that's become a really big elephant in the room.
Yeah, well, I've always said, and I know you probably agree with me to some extent, but I've always said that when politicians make really bad decisions, they should be held accountable. And if crimes are committed and people are hurt or die because of the decisions that they've made in government, then those are the folks who should be sitting in jail next to the actual perps.
Correct.
Correct. I'm sick of living in a country where politicians can make really stupid decisions that cost people their lives, and they're never held personally accountable for the moronics that they force on America.
Not one prosecution for those involved in Fast and Furious. Some of them were transferred from regional outposts in flyover country to Washington, D.C., and frankly, for most bureaucrats, that's a promotion. That's where they want to end up anyway, because that's where the power is. And so to tell some guy in flyover that we're to punish you for what you did in Fast and Furious, we're moving you to Washington, I can just hear them saying now, "Oh, don't throw me in that briar patch, Uncle Remus. Don't throw me in that briar patch."
I have to say it's the first Brer Rabbit explanation I've ever had on the show.
Well, we've been dealing with Brer Rabbit
and
for a
next
while.
we talk about tar babies here. No.
Yeah, and these tar babies apparently never stick at all.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you. So Loretta Lynch is, and I said I thought she was going to be worse than Eric Holder. Can I stand by that now? You think?
Well, when you get bad enough, it's hard for me to make a distinction of worse and not as bad. But I'll tell you what, she's certainly no improvement. She's certainly carrying out the anti-Second Amendment objectives of a president hostile to citizens owning and carrying guns. And Loretta Lynch is exactly the one he needed for the job that's being carried out. And to with a straight face say that we need to be worried about those firearms transactions, and I alluded to the kind of transactions they're going after, neighbors selling guns or trading guns with each other, and somehow they can use that to whistle right past the dead bodies of Fast and Furious. That's really quite an accomplishment, you have to admit.
Yeah, well, it's amazing to me, and I'm watching as in Oregon, where I'm at, they passed this law that the president's trying to implement by executive order. And I got to tell you, Larry, all they've done is make me a criminal. I mean, maybe that's the objective, is just to turn us all into criminals. Because I'm not going to comply with their stupid, idiotic laws. I'm not. I can just tell them right now, listen, Governor of Oregon, little dum-dum Brown, read my middle finger. I'm not going to comply. So
that's what happened in Connecticut and in New York. They passed gun laws that were so clearly anti-average citizen, not directed at the bad guys, that people just decided, this is unbelievable. I'm not playing.
Hang on, Larry.
Obey your law.
We'll be right back with Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America. We'll tell you how to join gun owners and help out. Join in the fight to save our freedom. Don't go away.
It ain't nothing.
All right, welcome back. Roger Fredinburg here with Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America. And if you want a gun organization that has chutzpah, as they call it, then you're going to want to be a GOA member. Larry, how do people get a hold of GOA? How do they get involved? What can they get over there?
Just stop by while you're on the internet at gunowners.org. And the easiest way to start finding out what we're doing is to join our email alert group. It's a freebie. When you get those alerts, they have a built-in email that you can send to the appropriate member of Congress of your area, and you can be informing them about what the folks want as far as legislation in the area of the Second Amendment. So gunowners.org, and take advantage of that email alert service that we offer.
Yeah, well, it's really nice. I mean, I love getting those press releases and things because it keeps me kind of updated and informed. I don't have to do a lot of research, thanks to you guys. Knock on wood and all. And I'm lazy, so I don't really want to do the research anyway. So to have it in my mailbox.
We've got a whole staff doing it, so you might as well take advantage of it.
Let you do the work
Price
for
is
me.
right.
I'm lazy like that. So I want to stick with the Congress thing just for a bit, Larry, because for years we've been talking. I've been interviewing you since the early '90s, and we have called and we have banged on our congressmen and women, and we have screamed and yelled and kicked and fussed and mussed and sued. And what really is effective when you're dealing with these people? How can we be more effective?
The lonely email and phone call, when carried out with enough others at the same time, can make a big difference. Following Sandy Hook, there was an effort to push for actually what the president's trying to do right now by executive order. It was ultimately unsuccessful, even with the NRA supporting it. And we had put out an email alert saying, you know, we've been seeing the NRA promote this expansion of the background check up on the Hill. They've been talking about it publicly here in Washington. Please contact the NRA. We gave people information how to do that, and let them know that you want them to oppose the legislation, not support it. And a week later, they actually did a 180. They got so many contacts from our Facebook friends contacting them, from those on our email list, that they did a 180. And once they did that, a week or so later, I'm not sure exactly, shortly after the Congress, the Senate, turned around and voted with us to kill the measure. Post Sandy Hook, with all of that hullabaloo following that tragedy, people, I think, are beginning to realize, well, wait a minute, that tragedy occurred in a gun-free zone. Excuse me, but wasn't that the umpteenth one to occur in a gun-free zone? In fact, only 2 since 1950 have taken place in public places that weren't in gun-free zones.
Yeah, I mean, up here in Oregon, just up the road from me in Roseburg, you know, we had this terrible assault on the campus there.
A gun-free zone.
And it's
because the campus policy violated state law. There's something about educators that's really stuck on gun control.
Right. Well, when, you know, again, the thing that I was screaming, and we'll get into it in the next segment a little bit, but when the president was giving his disgraceful State of the Union speech, I'm screaming at this guy because it's clear to me that he knows that millions of people are saved every year by the fact that they own a gun. And it never gets into the discussion. It's never part of the discussion.
The government itself has conducted surveys and found that probably 4 million times a year an American uses his firearm. Sometimes just to show it. Legal term is brandishing, but sometimes that can get you in trouble, which is one of the problems with our laws. But nevertheless, by just showing that you have a gun, many people don't even fire it. Bad guy goes away, which I think is a tribute to how responsible American gun owners are. As long as they see the crime ending, they're satisfied. They don't need to shoot the place up.
We'll be right back with Larry Pratt, gunowners.org. Don't go away.
It's the end of the world.
That's
The
right.
Lord knows I'm drinking.
Just let us be. There was a time when freedom actually meant something to the average American. I'm not so sure anymore. Larry Pratt is here with us today. It's gunowners.org. Is that right, Larry?
That's where you'll find Gun Owners of America. Yes, sir.
Get the free email and get after it, people. We need to save what little bit of freedom we have left if we can do it. And it's going to take a force, Larry, because the people are all stupid. I'm telling you. I hate to like you know, paint with too broad a brush, but the biggest thing you see today is the you know, like Jay Leno did the jaywalking, and you've got this guy Waters World on O'Reilly, and now Jimmy Kimmel's got this man on the street thing. They go out and they talk to these people, and I'm telling you, it's like, it's almost too frightening to have commentary on because you're afraid it'll spread like a virus. Stupidity is a dangerous thing, Larry.
At the same time, and I think I can't argue too strongly against what you're saying, we are dealing with a lot of misinformation, uninformation, if there's such a word. At the same time, thanks to radio shows like yours, all around the country, people are getting information they've not had before, and I think one of the reasons for the rising tide of disgust with the establishment, and this is not a partisan disgust. This is I've had it with the Democrats and the Republicans alike, kind of disgust. We elect the Republicans who pledged to get rid of Obamacare. They flat out broke their word. They refused to do it when they had it to do it. They still could if they wanted. They do not do it. All they have to do is defund it, cut off the money. The president may not like that. Well, if he wants to reduce the operation of some of the government for a while, his decision. But if the Republicans want to hold tight, they can say, well, anytime you want to sign, you're going to get a budget that has everything but what we just cut out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've talked to my dumb congressman, and I call him Congressman Zero now. For lack of a better definition, his name is Greg Walden. But, you know, I tell the guy, you guys can't be worrying about the next election and whether the voters are going to love you or not. Here's my scenario, Larry. Let me lay out the facts for you. To get health care right now for my wife and I, it's about $2,000 a month.
Just like the president promised.
The deductible is about $10,000. So I have to, if I comply with the law, it's before I ever get a dime in medical coverage, I'm going to have to spend $2,000. Well, it's about $1,800 a month, roughly $24,000 plus a $10,000 deductible. So I'm going to have to cough up $35,000 in cash to get a $300 medical procedure. Our medical bills run about, $600-800 a year. So I can't justify.
You ought to be self-insured the way the Amish are. They go to the hospital and they say, "How much will this appendectomy cost?" And initially, when they started doing that, the answer was, "I don't know." Well, you'll have to find out because I'm paying cash. Huh? They never heard of that. Well, they've heard of it now, and the Amish get cash prices, and they substantially undercut what insurance companies pay because insurance companies don't care.
Yeah, well, I don't understand how they expect people to do that. It would seem to me that Congressman Zero and his boys could go out on the street, get up in front of the podium and scream into a microphone and say, this is just a tax scheme for the government to screw us out of more money because no one that's self-employed and over 50 has even a chance of affording Obamacare or health care.
And meanwhile, the same mendaciously achieved objective of the administration, this Obamacare medical system, is one of the ways gun owners are losing their guns. There's the use of data in there from simply one medical provider's opinion that so-and-so might be a danger to self or others, and boom, gun rights are gone. The Veterans Administration, now the Social Security Administration, all in on the act together. Nobody thinks about, gee, is there anything like due process? If we're going to take somebody's guns away, should we have a trial in a court and accuse him of being that incompetent or that dangerous? And then on conviction, fine, take his guns away, although I would submit if someone is adjudicated in a court that dangerous, probably ought to be put in jail, because if they're really a criminal and they're really dangerous, guess what? They're going to get a gun anyway. So we're kidding ourselves. All this money, all this bother, and the only people that get hit are the law-abiding who own guns, who end up paying the price by losing their guns. What a system.
Well, I'm told that people who've just had a simple prescription for Prozac or other mood-altering drug could be classified as mentally unstable and have their gun rights taken away under Obama's new executive order.
And that's the objection that we have, because that is totally devoid of due process. That's the kind of thing we saw in Nazi Germany and in Soviet Russia. And it's a what's the right word, perversion of the medical practice, where doctors become tools of a political state rather than those that are working for the health of an individual. And the gap between those two objectives is huge. And so people's health is not going to get any better. It's probably going to get a lot worse. but the government will get a lot more abusive.
Well, I had a local legislator the other day try to explain to me. I get on the phone with these morons and try to explain to me, why it's a good thing to have these laws and how, there are some really sick people out there and people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're a real threat to society, and we got to watch out for those people.
Yeah.
And
that's what the courts are for.
We don't have time to be adjudicating all these cases.
Oh, I see. Yes, the trains will run much more efficiently when we have Comrade Benito in charge.
So he was arguing he said that Australia has had a great way of dealing with this gun issue, and that the president needs to do what they did in Australia. And I said, well, there's one little problem. Well, I said, there's one little problem for me. In Australia, they didn't have a Second Amendment right to own guns. So I don't really care what happened in Australia, honestly, because I have a Second Amendment that says you shall not infringe on my right.
Well, let's just for clarity explain that what he's advocating is the confiscation of all semi-automatic firearms, which increasingly in America would be well over half the firearms in private ownership. That's what this probably clueless legislator was advocating to you. And that kind of ignorance alone should disqualify him from serving in office.
Well, I told him that he was the poster child for what you run over in a crosswalk at 55. I mean, I'm sick of these people, I tell you. I don't know how, we're just out here across the state from me. You got a bunch of guys locked up in a government building, probably about to be crispy fried by the feds. And I'm watching all these things and I'm thinking, does that hurt the gun ownership rights of individuals when groups get together like these folks out in Malheur County and take over a federal building? How does that, because suddenly a lot of the talk here is about the guns.
Well, that's then a failure on the part of the Bundys and the others involved in the takeover of that wildlife center, because the issue that I've heard them articulate, and certainly the issue which I understand ought to be in debate, is why does the federal government own all these lands when it's clearly prohibited, not just not suggested, prohibited by our national constitution. And that, if they haven't gotten that into the debate effectively, then they failed to make their point, which I thought was their point initially when I heard about the takeover.
I think they've tried to make that point, but the liberal media tries to make it about the armed thugs out there, and it's all about the armed thugs,
right?
And because that plays into their narrative. But I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute. Wasn't the Second Amendment designed for just this kind of a moment?
Precisely.
When the American people say, you know what, I've had enough. Somehow, somebody has to make a stand. And I'm hearing a lot of people ridicule the Bundys. I don't think I would have advised them to do it the way they're doing it. It's not, it's their business. I'm not involved in it. But I would tell you that somebody has to make a stand, because if you look at the map, if you get the federal lands, color-coded lands map out here in the West, I mean, we're basically just a prison camp. We're like a big giant concentration camp for the feds out here. They own everything.
Certain islands of land in a sea of federal land ownership, and that is strictly not permitted.
They've given all these environmental groups standing in court when they don't really have standing. They've shut down the natural resource industries. They have destroyed. I mean, literally destroyed.
Let's go back to that point, because I think it's a good one. There wouldn't be an environmental movement to be bringing all these suits were there not all these federal lands. If they had to sue the Marriott Corporation for their management of a resort, or a private timbering company for their management of a piece of land that they take a lot of care of because it's a renewable resource that they want to make sure they can be making a profit on year after year, that would be an entirely different story than fallow lands that are being mishandled by federal bureaucrats who have no ownership interest whatsoever in the financial stability of the stewardship of their control of those loans.
All right, hold on. We'll be back with Larry Pratt. Gunowners.org. Join up. We'll be right back. Call me anytime. Don't forget, Radio Roger at AOL.com, at Radio Roger on Twitter, Roger Fredinburg on Facebook. Don't forget our breaking news channel on YouTube. You'll hear Larry's interview up there. I'll have a little video up there in a day or so you can look at. So you can share it with your friends. Larry Pratt is here from Gun Owners of America. Hello, Larry.
Really neat to hear how you are using to the hilt the modern media, which I think is, to circle back to something we were discussing earlier, is why with all of the things that we face against us, we're able to fight more effectively than we were 10, 20 years ago, because we can get our side of a story out so much more effectively than ever before. And so hooray for Roger Fredinburg for using all those media outlets.
Well, thank you. I know you guys have got a lot on the line this election cycle, and you put your endorsement on Ted Cruz for president. And he's certainly come under a lot of fire the last week or two. What's going on with him?
Well, we've seen this guy since he was running for Senate in Texas, took on a multi-millionaire, the sitting lieutenant governor of the state, which some have argued makes him more powerful really than the governor. Governor's presiding in a legislature that doesn't really meet that often, but the lieutenant governor kind of gets to guide the helm of what that legislature does and has tremendous influence all year long. The lieutenant governor was able to start his campaign off with some $20 million, just cloop into his campaign coffer. Cruz is coming under fire because he borrowed $1 million, he and his wife, by putting all of their assets up for grabs, up for collateral, so that they could enter this competition against the multimillionaire. And because he only filed in one place instead of two with the federal government, somehow you would think that he was trying to get away with something. Well, it's not like he was spending Mexican cartel money. He wasn't taking loans from crony capitalists. He and his wife literally bet the farm. And I hardly have any problem with that. And if they made a bureaucratic error.
Yeah, I think people see through that. I think people understand that you're gonna get donations and pay back the loans, and I mean there's a cycle that is part of the process of politics. I don't honestly. I think he could explain that one pretty easily. I do think that the greater challenge is the Canadian birth and overcoming the obstacles there, because even if the law is on his side, and I don't really have a dog in this fight, but even if it is, you still have that stigma. You know, you have to overcome that somehow. And,
well, it's obviously in Trump's interest to try to muddy the water, but clearly Romney was able to be a candidate. The issue was never raised because he was part of the establishment. But Romney's both parents were born in Mexico. That never was a big deal during that campaign because George Romney was buddy with the establishment. We've had other, and in fact, Cruz's mother was born in Scotland. Trump's mother was born in Scotland, and while Trump was born here, if somehow the mother being non-native born is a biggie, then he should have as much problem as anybody else. But that's not a problem for other people, but it is for Cruz.
Right. Well, I got a funny feeling, like it or not, this is going to get adjudicated somewhere down the road.
Well, and you almost hate to have the courts get into that, but that may well happen. the facts are pretty clear, and the history of it's pretty clear. When it applies to other people, no problem. Now that a guy like Cruz is within striking distance of the presidency, oy vey, big problem. Because why? Well, because Cruz really means to make some changes. Cruz campaign, and the reason we supported him for Senate in that primary down in Texas in 2012 was he said he wanted to go and mix things up in Washington. Now that he's doing it,
yeah, well, he was true to his word on that. Larry, thank you very much. Gun Owners of America, gunowners.org. Get the free email. Check out the website. Larry Pratt, God bless you, brother.
Good to be with you, Roger. Thank you so much.
Take care, my friend.
So